There will be spoilers, Ed, for The Twilight Zone Season 2, Episode 1, Meet in the Middle. And there will be spoilers for the episodes Time Enough at Last, People Are Alike All Over, A Stop at Willoughby, and To Serve Man from The Twilight Zone, the original series. In Meet in the Middle, we follow Philip Hayes, a man who goes on countless dates but can't seem to find a lasting connection. During one of his dates, Phil hears a voice in his head, a voice belonging to a woman named Annie Mitchell. Phil and Annie discover that they have this unique ability to telepathically communicate with each other. They form an intimate long-distance relationship through this mysterious connection. Phil and Annie have a very unique form of communication. However, it's not that different from the way people connect on the internet. Anyone is able to get to know a complete stranger from hundreds of miles away, using the wide variety of social media applications we have available. The title of this episode, Meet in the Middle, is very fitting, because Phil never meets anyone halfway. Phil has unrealistic expectations for the women he's dating. He thinks he's entitled to a perfect relationship, but doesn't put in any effort to be fun or charming on his dates. He doesn't hold himself to the same standards as any of his potential partners. Phil thought he was doomed to be alone, and claimed he just wanted to meet someone awesome. Phil blamed everything on the women he was dating, saying it was their fault he was unhappy. He felt all this resentment towards women, without ever thinking there may be an issue with himself. After his date with Julia, Phil described her as boring and vapid. However, Phil was incredibly uninteresting during their date. Julia was the opposite of boring and vapid. She was engaging. She thought it would be fun to order a bunch of smaller dishes, so they could try a mixture of items on the menu. She was also caught up on pop culture. She watched a show called Chef Boss, and by doing so, she learned some information about the restaurant they were eating at. Phil said he didn't know half the stuff on the menu, while Julia did some research on Yelp and found a dish that she recommended to him. All Phil did was comment on her hair being curly, and how it was different from her profile picture where she had straight hair. Phil cared way too much about these small, superficial details, although the only time we watched him put any effort into his appearance was when he was going to see Annie. He didn't recognize that he needed to change his approach to dating to live a less lonely life. Phil's behavior outside of the dating world was also not that great. He rudely walked out of his therapy session, and he abruptly shut the door on his landlord when she confronted him about not paying rent. Phil had this tendency of easily giving up so he could feel sorry for himself. When he tried to ask out the barista at the coffee shop, he immediately gave up when a handsome guy started talking to her. He just wallowed in self-pity and convinced himself he was owed more than he was giving. After he started talking to Annie, Phil's energy changed when he was in public. He went from this boring guy who was devoid of any joy to someone who was always smiling and laughing. He looked like he was finally enjoying life. The barista Phil was going to ask out noticed this change in Phil's energy and found Phil smiling and laughing to himself somewhat charming, explaining how he got her to say yes to a date later in the episode. But when he was on the date with the barista, Phil continued to say things so lifelessly. But if he just externalized that same kind of energy he had when talking to Annie, his dates would have been going a lot better. However, any chance of Phil changing was stopped when Annie exploited his flaws and convinced him to leave therapy. The kind of therapy that may have helped Phil acknowledge his self-destructive behavior. Annie was catfishing Phil, a term used to describe someone making a fictional online identity and convincing their victim they are this fake person. Annie was always on Phil's mind and took up most of his life. Annie's name even appeared in the back office of the grocery store Phil managed, as there were boxes of Annie's mac and cheese on the shelf. And speaking of Easter eggs, Phil placed his clipboard on top of a box of cereal named Frosted Canamunch. The cereal is named after the aliens called the Canamites from the Twilight Zone episode To Serve Man. Also, the website Phil used to look up Annie's address was called People All Over, in reference to the Twilight Zone episode People Are Alike All Over. Anyway, Phil let something that's not even physically present negatively affect him in such a drastic way. Phil's situation is representative of how certain people obsessively follow someone they're attracted to on social media, while having this expectation of being rewarded when doing something for them. This type of person is willing to do whatever it takes to be in good standing with the individual they're following. It can get to a point where this person defends a stranger without ever questioning the veracity of their story. The follower is prepared to cross a line to be on good terms with someone who doesn't care about them, and would not be interested if they met in real life. When he was getting ready to visit Annie, Phil picked up a book with the title Kalokagathia, a word derived from the Greek phrase kalos kagathos, used to describe the ideal of gentlemanly principles. Phil picking up this book was implying that he thought of himself as this brave, chivalrous gentleman. Earlier in the episode, Phil was on a fan page for the same science fiction novel when looking up Annie on social media. Later in the episode, when Phil was going to see Annie in person and save her from her husband, he had a physical copy of the book. The cover of the book had an illustration of a man being overpowered by technology. Phil is the embodiment of anyone who over-romanticizes a stranger online, and unknowingly lets their life get consumed by a connection through a screen. When Phil was on his way to rescue Annie, Annie said that she was taken somewhere outside of Kingswood Station. Phil took the train to Kingswood and found Annie's glasses in the shopping area. By the way, Annie's glasses reminded me of Henry Bemis's glasses from the Twilight Zone episode Time Enough at Last. At the end of Time Enough at Last, Henry Bemis stumbled when reaching for a book, causing his glasses to fall off his head. Both lenses shattered when they hit the ground. Annie's glasses looked exactly like Henry's when Phil found them. After Phil killed Annie's husband, it was revealed that Annie had no intention of being with Phil. Annie made everything up and used Phil to kill her husband so her and her daughter could live a better life. Phil idolized Annie even though he never met her. Phil was lost. He claimed he didn't know his purpose and he didn't feel special. He continued to blame other women for his problems. So Phil used Annie as an escape from his life. He was mostly projecting when talking to her. He wasn't in love with Annie, he was in love with this idea of her. Phil even held up a picture of Annie the same way he held up a picture of Julia when commenting on her curly hair. Phil conjured up this idea of Annie that possessed all those unrealistic qualities he thought he wanted in a partner. This caused Phil to easily believe in the persona Annie made up. Annie even said to him, "All I ever did was tell you what you wanted to hear." Phil's delusion caused him to miss a small and incredibly important detail. Annie told Phil that she wanted to meet halfway between Ashford and Diamond Falls. When Phil entered the train to go see her, he said that the trip would take 4 hours and 12 minutes. When Annie was supposedly taken near Kingswood Station, Phil freaked out, and a conductor approached him to ask if he was okay. By the way, the conductor was wearing the same hat as the conductor from the Twilight Zone episode A Stop at Willoughby. Phil asked the conductor how much longer it would take to get to Kingswood, and was told 4 hours. But earlier in the episode, Phil searched for a train ticket from Ashford to Diamond Falls, and the website showed that the entire trip would take 4 hours and 12 minutes. So if they were meeting halfway, it should have been a 2-hour train ride, not the full 4 hours. They were not meeting in the middle. Phil was going all the way to the end of the line. Annie's husband threatened to call the cops, something Phil should have done, but he was irrational and wanted to be Annie's valiant hero. When the police entered the house, the song Can't Take My Eyes Off You by Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons began to play, a song about someone wanting the opportunity to be with the one they desire. The cheerful tone of the music, contrasting with the shocking imagery, helped us better understand Phil's mindset. He was glad to see Annie because he was expecting to be rewarded for murdering someone to save her. The lyrics are used to better represent his thought process of, I did something awful for you, so now we can be together. Phil was a lonely guy who found sanctuary in someone who lived hundreds of miles away. But this form of escapism led to his imprisonment. Phil courageously rode in on his horse to save Annie and be her knight in shining armor. However, Phil exits in the back of a cop car, realizing he was her expendable pawn. At the end of the episode, we see a title card that reads in memory of Carolyn Serling. She was married to Rod Serling, the creator of The Twilight Zone, the original series. Carolyn passed away January 9th of this year. She was an executive producer for all of Season 1 of The Twilight Zone reboot, and she was an executive producer for The Twilight Zone Season 2, Episode 3, The Who of You. It's awesome to know she helped bring back the series. That's all I had to say about Meet in the Middle. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next analysis of The Twilight Zone.